the house I bought last October. The one on Gage Avenue in Hamilton with the wraparound porch and the old maple in the front yard that bleeds orange every fall. I didn't buy it for myself. I bought it for the woman who cleared space in her spare room when my own brother decided he needed that space for a home office. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this actually starts. Not the part I'm proud of. The part I still don't like sitting with. My name is Hazel Renwick. I was 27 years old, working as an office administrator at a dental clinic on Upper James Street in Hamilton, Ontario. I had a one-bedroom apartment on Cannon Street East, old building, drafty windows in January, a radiator that clanked like it was arguing with itself every February night, but it was mine. I'd been there 4 years, paid on time, every month, never bounced a check, never gotten a complaint, never had so much as a noise violation. Then one Thursday afternoon in March, I found an envelope taped to my door. N12 notice landlord's own use 60 days. If you've been through this in Ontario, you know what that means. A landlord can issue an N12 if they claim a family member needs to move in. You get 60 days. There's a tribunal process, but it doesn't move fast enough to save you in the meantime. The building wasn't being sold. My landlord's daughter was moving back from out west. And just like that, the address that had been my home for 4 years was no longer mine to claim. I want you to understand something about that moment. I had done everything right. 4 years on time, every single month. I'd shoveled the front walk in February without being asked. It didn't matter, because someone decided their own need mattered more than my security in it, and the law gave them 60 days to make that official. I spent 3 weeks looking for something else. The rental market in Hamilton had changed completely while I wasn't paying close attention. Bachelor suites were going for close to $1,800 a month. One bedrooms, if you could find one, were pushing past $2,000. The places I could afford had wait lists. The places I could get into required first and last month's rent up front. Close to $4,000 that I didn't have sitting liquid. I made decent money at the clinic, but I also had a car payment and student debt from college, and the kind of emergency cushion that a moment like this demands. Takes longer to build than anyone tells you when you're starting out. I applied for 8 apartments. Credit score not quite high enough for one. Income insufficient on paper for another, even though I had income. References accepted. Application rejected for reasons no one explained clearly. The math wasn't landing in time. So I did what most people do when the options run out. I called family. My brother Reed is 4 years older than me. He and his wife own a 4-bedroom house in Ancaster, bought it in 2019, before the market made that kind of purchase impossible for most people our age. Finished basement, real yard. The kind of stability that's easy to forget. You're standing in when you've been standing in it long enough. I called him on a Sunday. I explained everything. The N12, the search, the deposits, the timeline. I told him I needed somewhere to land for 60 days. Maybe less. Just a room. Not money. Not a long-term arrangement. Just a roof that wasn't my car. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Hazel, I don't know. It's just not a great time." I asked him why. He said, "Mel's been working from home full-time since January. She has the basement set up as her office now. And honestly, we've kind of gotten used to our space the way it is." I stayed on the line. I was genuinely certain I had misheard him. Because surely my brother had not just told me that his wife's preferred remote work arrangement was more important than his sister not having somewhere to sleep. But that is exactly what he said. And then he added, "And I want you to really hear this." He said, "You're smart, Hazel. You'll figure it out." Smart. I was 27 years old, working a full-time job, about to be displaced through absolutely no fault of my own, and my brother told me I was smart and that I'd figure it out. I hung up. I sat on the floor of the apartment I was about to lose, and cried harder than I had since I was a teenager. Not because I was shocked, exactly. Reed and I had never been especially close, but because there is a particular kind of hurt that comes from understanding, finally and completely, that when it really counts, the people who are supposed to show up won't. That version of you they carry in their heads. The capable one. The one who handles things. It is very convenient for them. It costs them nothing to believe in it. I called my parents that evening. They'd moved to Prince Edward Island the year my dad retired. Good people. Just far and genuinely not in a position to wire me first and last in the time I had. My mom cried, which made everything harder. My dad suggested I look into emergency housing supports through the city, which he meant well by, but wasn't actually the problem I was trying to solve. The next 4 nights, I split between my coworker's air mattress and my car. I'm not going to dress that up. Sleeping in your car in Hamilton in March is cold. In a way that gets into you around 3 in the morning and doesn't leave until noon. It's disorienting. Every set of headlights through the window is a reason to jolt awake. I kept my work clothes folded on the passenger seat so I could change in the clinic washroom before my shift started. I told exactly one person what was happening. Everyone else I smiled at, booked their appointments, answered the phone, and handled whatever came in. I was good at appearing fine. I had practice. On the 5th night, I got a text. The number was one I hadn't seen active in nearly 2 years. Georgette Owlett had been the office manager at my first job out of college. A medical administrative position I'd held for 3 years before moving to the dental clinic. She was sharp, methodical, warm in the particular way of people who don't perform warmth but simply have it. She'd retired and moved to Brantford, about an hour southwest of Hamilton. We'd kept the loose kind of contact you maintain with people you genuinely liked. Occasional texts, her remembering my birthday in September. The text said, "Hazel, I heard through your old colleague that things are difficult right now. I have a spare room if you need it. No conditions. Just let me know." I read it probably 6 times. I kept looking for the catch, the asterisk, the part where it got complicated. There wasn't one. I drove to Brantford that same night. Georgette lived in a bungalow on a quiet street near the Grand River. 2 bedrooms, a garden she'd been cultivating for close to 20 years, a kitchen that smelled like something had either just been made or was about to be. She must have heard my car in the driveway, because she opened the front door before I even knocked. She looked at the bag over my shoulder, and at whatever my face was doing after 4 nights in a car, and she said, simply, "Did you eat?" That was it. No preamble, no careful conversation about the situation, about what I should have done, about what came next. Just that. I hadn't eaten since noon. She made lentil soup from scratch. There was bread already on the counter. We sat at her kitchen table and she let me talk for 2 hours. She didn't interrupt to offer perspectives I hadn't asked for. She didn't redirect me towards silver linings or action steps. She listened to all of it. The notice, the apartment search, my brother, the air mattress, the car, the cold, the pretending at work. And when I ran out of words, she refilled my mug of tea and said, "The spare room is yours for as long as you need it. There's an extra key on the hook beside the door." That night, I slept in a real bed for the first time in almost a week. I cried again, but differently. Not from desperation, from relief, from the particular tenderness of being caught by someone who had no obligation to catch you, and did it anyway, quietly and completely, with soup and a spare key and no strings attached. That kind of thing stays with you differently than almost anything else. Georgette had spent 3 decades in property management and office administration before she retired. She wasn't wealthy, she was settled. Comfortable in the way careful people get when they've lived thoughtfully for a long time. She had her routines, her Thursday evening book club, her garden from April to October, her morning walks down to the river trail. And she folded me into all of it, without once making me feel like a burden or a charity case, or anything other than someone she was genuinely glad to have around. Within a month, she mentioned to a former colleague, a property manager overseeing a small residential portfolio across Hamilton and Burlington, that she saw someone sharp who was looking to make a change. That colleague called me directly. The position was full-time administrative coordinator, health benefits included, and the hourly rate was better than anything I'd been earning at the clinic. I got the job. That job, that one mention Georgette made, that one phone call placed on my behalf, is the thread that connects every single thing that followed. I worked there for 4 years. I learned the industry from the inside out. Tenant relations, maintenance coordination, lease agreements, LTB filings, the full structure of how residential property management actually works when you're standing inside it. I got my property management license. I started saving in a way I never had before. Deliberate, monthly, with a number in mind and a reason behind it. After 7 months at Georgette's bungalow, I moved into my own apartment in Burlington. First and last month paid in full, from my own account with money I had earned. My name on the lease. I didn't hold my breath waiting for the next envelope. I kept going. But I want to be honest about the years between 27 and 34. They were not a clean upward line. There was a winter where my car needed expensive repairs, and I lived on eggs and rice for 6 weeks, and showed up to Georgette's on Sunday afternoons partly to visit, and partly because she always sent me home with leftovers. There was a business partnership I came close to entering that would have tied me to the wrong people, and walking away from it cost me some relationships and a few months of wondering whether I'd made a mistake. There were nights when the next step felt too large, and I constructed every possible reason not to take it. Every single time I came close to stopping, I thought about Georgette asking if I'd eaten. Just that. You don't give up when someone has already held that kind of door open for you. It feels like a dishonor to the person who stood in the frame. By 34, I had built something I was genuinely proud of. I had partnered with 2 people I'd come to trust completely. Both women I'd met through the industry at different points. and together we had secured financing and acquired a small portfolio of residential rental properties across the Hamilton-Brantford corridor. We were careful and fair, the kind of landlords we'd each needed at some point and not always found. Within about 2 years of starting, things had shifted considerably in our favor. That's when I started looking seriously at the house on Gage Avenue. I'd first noticed it the previous spring. Corner lot, 3 bedrooms, updated kitchen, a wraparound porch with a railing wide enough to rest a mug on. The old maple in the front yard had been there long enough that the house seemed to exist around it, rather than the other way around. I drove past it a handful of times over the following months. I knew who it was for from the first time I saw it. I purchased it in September. I had the yard tidied up and the porch furniture chosen, 2 wide chairs with deep green cushions. Before I said a word to anyone, Georgette had mentioned something years earlier so casually I almost missed it, about how she'd always thought a porch was the most civilized thing a house could have. One that faced a proper street, room for 2 chairs. Somewhere to set your cup in the morning and not look at a parking lot. I had written it down that same evening in a notebook I still have. I don't think she remembered saying it. I arranged a dinner in October and told everyone it was to mark some business news, which was true, just incomplete. My brother Reed came with his wife. My parents drove over from where they were staying with friends in Niagara, and Georgette came in a green wool cardigan she saves for occasions, carrying a pan of butter tarts, because I'd told her to bring whatever she felt like, and she felt like butter tarts. We were most of the way through dinner when Reed made a comment. He'd been making small remarks all evening. The kind that are dressed as observations but function as credit claiming. At one point he said, "I always knew you'd get here, Hazel. You just needed the right motivation." I looked at him across the table. I didn't say, "You told me Mel needed the basement." I didn't say the motivation was someone else entirely. I smiled and said, "You're right. I had help from exactly the right people at exactly the right time." Georgette caught my eye. She's known me long enough to hear what I leave out of a sentence. After we cleared the plates, I asked everyone to come into the front room. There was a small cedar box on the sideboard. I'd finished it myself at a woodworking class the previous spring, simple darks, stain, plain, metal clasp. I handed it to Georgette. She looked at the box, then at me. "What is this, Hazel?" "Open it." Inside, a house key on a plain ring, and a folded card with the address on Gage Avenue. She stared at the key for a long time. The room was very quiet. "Hazel." Her voice was already going. "It's yours," I said. "The deed's been in your name since the offer was accepted." She cried the way people cry when something they'd stopped expecting arrives anyway. Not the tidy kind. Not the photogenic kind. The real kind. The kind that means something long held has finally come loose. She kept shaking her head and I kept nodding mine, and eventually she reached over and held my hand with both of hers. And didn't let go for a while. My brother was very still across the room. I looked at him. Not with anger, because I had genuinely spent a long time arriving at a place where the anger had converted into something more useful. But, clearly, and I said, "Everything I built after I was 27 started at Georgette's kitchen's table. I just wanted to make sure she knew I hadn't forgotten." He nodded, slowly, said nothing. I think possibly for the first time, he was doing the actual arithmetic on what his answer that Sunday afternoon had meant. Not just for me, but for himself. Georgette moved in on a Saturday, 3 weeks before the maple hit full color. I helped carry boxes. We put her books on the built-in shelves in the hallway, and hung her grandmother's landscape painting, where the afternoon light would find it. We set the 2 green chairs on the porch, and had tea, while the neighborhood settled into evening around us. She asked me at some point why I'd done it. I told her the truth, because 7 years ago, I was sleeping in my car in March, and you texted me like it was simple. Like of course you had a spare room. Like helping someone who needed it was just the obvious thing to do, not a calculation, not a favor. And I built everything I have on the foundation of that text, and your lentil soup, and a key on a hook beside the door. And I wanted you to have something built on it too. Something that lasts past convenience. She was quiet for a while after that. The maple was letting leaves go, slow and steady, one at a time, the way it does when the season has genuinely turned. Then she said, "I just did what anyone should do." And that's exactly it, isn't it? Not everyone does. Some people look at the space behind their door and decide they need it for themselves. Some people look at the same space and open the door anyway. My brother made his choice. Georgette made hers, and choices don't stay still. They move, they accumulate, they show up years later in ways you didn't predict. At kitchen tables and family dinners and on porches in October, with the light going low and a cup warming your hands. Reed chose his space. Georgette chose me. And I have spent the last 7 years making sure that choice had somewhere to land.